The final battle with Count Strahd von Zarovich in Curse of Strahd should be a terrifying ordeal for the players. It's also a pretty terrifying ordeal for DMs too, because DMs want to make sure it's the final battle of the campaign against an iconic villain, that it is done with justice, that it is a satisfying, entertaining, challenging end to the campaign. When I see people ask for advice on places like the Curse of Strahd subreddit, they'll often say, any tips for the final battle? And 9 times out of 10, I have to ask the question if I leave a comment saying, where is the final battle due to take place as per the Tarokka reading? Because 9 times out of 10, people don't actually say where it is. And it's a big deal because players are directed there, and it's different people, because of the Tarokka reading, different tables will have different places where they fight Strahd. And to be honest with you, a battle in one place is going to be radically different to a battle in another. You think of a battle on the Overlook is going to be very different to a battle in Strahd's study in the middle of the castle versus one of the catacombs and tombs right down below. So in this video, I'm going to give battle tactics for Strahd by each location. Greetings fellow Mist Wanderers, my name is Steve Morgan and this is DM of the Mists, covering all things Curse of Strahd and Ravenloft. As I mentioned in the intro, I'm going to run through each location for Strahd and give some battle tips for each. Before you jump ahead, please watch this next section first because it kind of gives more context and contains some disclaimers. If you jump ahead to the relevant section, then you might miss some important info. This video is going to be a bit of a weird one to structure because chances are people aren't going to watch it from start to finish. You'll probably just want to watch the bit that concerns you, which is fair enough. Unless, of course, you want to watch it all from start to finish, whether that's because you think Strahd will move around the castle and he may start on the Overlook but then go to the nearby chapel, so you might want to watch both those sections. Or if you plan to run Curse of Strahd or Strahd Must Die Tonight multiple times, or if you draw the Mists card during the Tarokka reading and Madam Eva can't say where he's going to be and so you get to choose. I'll talk more about that later, including a couple of locations that aren't part of the Tarokka reading that you might want to consider. If you look at the description, I've done timestamps of the different locations, or you might be able to see it in the time bar. Is that what it's called? The time bar? Sounds like a hipster joint. But yeah, so you'll probably want to jump ahead to that in a bit after I've covered off this sort of initial info. If your location is one of the Catacombs locations, so Strahd's tomb, Sergei's tomb, or the parents' tomb, what I've done is I've included like a sort of general Catacombs tips section ahead of it. So I'd recommend watching that first so I don't have to repeat myself 3 times, because those 3 locations have elements that are, because they're all catacombs, there's catacomb stuff in there, I didn't want to say it 3 times. So watch that section first, then watch the specific tomb or location that applies to you. This video assumes you are running a rules as written vanilla Strahd with his default stat block. There are of course variations of Strahd. There's a great version I've heard called the 3-phase Strahd, which I think was by Dragon Carter. There's an infamous challenge rating 27 version that you can pick up on DM's Guild. Plus there's the whole thing about how you might have access to all the spells in the player's handbook through the Amber Temple. I actually gave him Shield and Misty Step and dropped 2 of his other spells so that he could boost his AC every now and again in a possible way to escape a grapple, which is a big way to take down Strahd, to be honest. And it assumes as well that you're using the rules as written legendary actions and lair actions. This also assumes that he has no minions to start, except for I think the only location where he could have minions to start is Strahd's Coffin. And this is rules as written, by the way, because if you look at the Vampire's minion section, it says that whenever Strahd appears in a location other than his tomb or the place indicated by the card reading, consult the Strahd's minion table and he brings some minions. So if it's the place where it's the card reading, there shouldn't be any minions. There's nothing stopping you from bringing in minions from round 2 onwards, which is what I did when I ran it. But initially he should be on his own. This assumes that you have the wall phasing lair action switched on at all times. As much as I love the idea that he can summon a shadow or a spectre or lock all the doors, I think it is, he's best played with the wall phasing lair action just constant. And the risk is if you switch to one of the lair actions in and he needs to make a quick escape because there's sunlight shining in his face, he might not be able to so easily. So when I do talk about tips of moving to different areas, for example, or hiding in different rooms, this assumes that you always use the wall phasing lair action. This video assumes you are using the original 2014 rules of 5th edition and not the new versions that have recently come out. As I record this, the 2024 Player's Handbook has been out a little while now, but I haven't had a thorough look at it yet, and I appreciate that I might talk about certain spells and it doesn't line up with the new version. I'm referring to the old version. If that makes a difference, it might not. This assumes that the location is where the battle starts. Now, this is how a lot of people interpret the Tarokka reading, that this is the place where Strahd is encountered, and this is where the final battle with him starts. Not necessarily that the final battle has to be contained in that area. So, for example, if it's the Overlook, he might then want to move to a different location, somewhere with cover, where he can hide from sunlight. So it's not that he has to necessarily stay on the Overlook at all times and be a sitting duck, essentially. I heavily recommend researching the castle layout ahead of time. There's a great map that somebody shared on Reddit that shows lines that connect all the stairways, and I can confirm that it's accurate. It was published when I was actually running Castle Ravenloft for my players, and I double checked it and it lined up. I think there's one stairway missing, but otherwise it lines up perfectly, and it really helps to give an idea of where the staircases go. And I recommend always having a backup plan for Strahd. Know your exits. Sound like an air steward. Know where your exits are at all times. Know where different rooms lead, staircases as well, as I just mentioned, and know where Strahd can go if he gets turned into mist form, but not in sunlight. There's the gap in the wine cellar. There's the gap in the stairs by the chapel. That's K63, K18 respectively, where he can make a quick escape, go to the catacombs, go to his coffin. And please understand that this is not a 100% comprehensive Strahd battle plan guide video. There are plenty of other resources out there. I don't necessarily want to repeat what's covered elsewhere, but in my experience, not many people talk about location-specific tactics. So don't use this video on its own. Use this in conjunction with other people's tactics and guides, and then you'll learn some more stuff that maybe I've missed. I will go through in order location by number of the chapter, as in K number. So I think it starts at the ground floor, goes up, then does the basement and the crypts. And I will do some more general tips at the end as well that aren't location specific, but that also tie into the tips that I give. And I will use James's RPG arts when I show some of the different locations. So a big thank you to James in advance for your amazing Castle Ravenloft and overall Barovia artwork. And I think he's got artwork for every single Tarokka reading Strahd battle location, which is great. So to summarize, before you move on, if it is a non-crypt location, after you've finished watching this, you can go to your section, plus there's general and bonus tips at the end, and bonus locations. If it is a crypt location, please jump to the general crypts information section, then the specific crypt that applies, then you can watch the general information and the bonus information at the end. And if you draw the mists card, I've got a dedicated section where I'll talk about other locations you could consider. The Overlook, K6, this is if you draw the Executioner card. It says, if your card reading indicates an encounter with Strahd in this area, he's looking out over the balcony. This is possibly, for Strahd, the riskiest and most dangerous location for him, because he is exposed, he's out in the open, and if your players have at least one of the two sunlight items, he is toast, no pun intended. I would suggest that he tries to go past them straight away, head west, and more phase in and out of the chapel. The PCs then have to try and maybe stop him as he comes out, maybe doing some sort of ready action with a grapple, or hold vampires with the holy symbol, or they could try and smash the boarded up stained glass windows, or they might have to go all the way around the front and go in the entrance that way, and that could be a good way to split up the players. Plus he could rope in the gargoyles and the castle entrance. The only issue with this approach is the icon of Ravenloft. I'll talk more about this when I cover the chapel section, which is bad for vampires. A cool thing to do if there is no sunlight items in play, and so you can kind of have the battle there and it's less risky, is he could do Gust of Wind. He could be west of the players, cast Gust of Wind and try and push the players off the Overlook. That could be really scary for them. I guess you could do some sort of mechanic where if they do get pushed off, they've got a dexterity saving throw to grab on, so they don't just fall the 1,000 feet straight away. But that could be pretty scary for them. I've even heard of some DMs who have Strahd grapple PCs and drag them and throw them off the Overlook. That is very cool. Very harsh for your PCs though. But hey, it's Ravenloft, it's Strahd, it's horror. And also it's going to be really hard to do if sunlight is in play, because Strahd is probably just going to be fried to a crisp. If and when he uses Children of the Night, I would recommend doing that as he heads back into the chapel. However, if he uses it while he's outside, he can call 3d6 wolves, who can just come running in as extra minions, and that can really slow down the players. And you can play the wolves tactically. Maybe they gang up on some of the weaker people, and things like pack tactics and knocking them prone, advantage, and that's going to chip away at their HP and be a big distraction while they're also trying to fight Strahd. I would have minions join from literally everywhere and anywhere you can, from around the sides of the castle, from the back door, which is K23, just to try and give Strahd a hand. And if you're using animate objects, which I really recommend, it's a great spell, he could cast it on just some of the rubble that's there from the empty outbuildings nearby and throw those at the players. The Chapel, K15. This is the artifact card. If your card reading indicates an encounter with Strahd in this area, he is among the bats fluttering below the ceiling, or he is standing at the one end of the chapel, a dark shape in the vast hall. So you get a choice here of where you want him, up in the ceiling as a bat, or just stood by the chapel. The biggest problem and barrier with this location is the icon of Ravenloft, assuming it's still there. Now, that's going to give disadvantage, but Strahd could potentially move away from the area, so he's out of its radius. I think I remember someone on Reddit saying that he's got Mage Hand, so he can even use Mage Hand and just move it out the way. He's not technically touching it then with his bare hands and getting the radiant shock or whatever it is. The good thing for him to do is he could hide amongst the bats in the ceiling. So he could turn into bat form, hide amongst the bats in the ceiling, and then you can say to the players, well, which one's Strahd? I believe it's about 90 feet up at the top of the dome. If you look at map 1, which is kind of like the sort of side-on view of the castle, I think it's the poster map, and shows the heights. It's about level with the ramparts, and that's 90 feet up. So the holy symbol of Ravenkind has a maximum reach, I believe, of 60 feet for sunlight, and the sun sword is 30. So it's going to be a struggle for them. That's somewhere he could just do, get out of the way and recover some health and get out of the radius of the sunlight. He could wall phase down the stairs towards the crypt. So there's that bit where it says it's bricked up, but there's a small gap. He could just be cheeky and hide there and then keep coming back and attack. And it's unlikely the players can follow him unless they've got things like Misty Step or find a way through the wall, assuming the wall hasn't already been disassembled. He could be cheeky and lead the players to the gargoyles in K8 or the Red Dragon Wyrmlings to K7, assuming they're still in play. For instance, if he goes out the front entrance, he just keeps heading west and they follow, and then those can attack and get into the mix as well. And then he's also throwing spells from outside inside at the players. He could use Children of the Night while he's a bat in the ceiling if you decide to do that, or while he's hiding in other rooms using his wall phasing. I'd have minions join from stairs, corridors, wherever and anywhere they can. There's a few ways they can come in, either through the long corridor leading to the chapel or down the stairs near the chapel, north of the chapel. And if you want to be really cool with animate objects, he animates parts of the broken pews, bits of wood, splinters of wood, and just throws them at the players. The Audience Hall, K25, the Beast card. If your card reading indicates an encounter with Strahd in this area, he is sitting on the wooden throne. Now, the first thing I'm going to suggest is really cheeky. He could lure the players into Leaf's room, the accountant. If Leaf then gets scared, he pulls the rope and in come a bunch of minions. According to the book, which I've got here, shadows, vampire spawn, wights, or wraiths and spectres that could really do some extra damage in alongside Strahd. The one cool thing you could have him do is cast Gust of Wind east of the window and try and push some players out through the stained glass window. That'd be quite cool, quite dramatic. He could rope in Helga, the nearby vampire spawn, in K32. And if he's doing his wall phasing, he could potentially hide in the areas K13, K31 and K33, all of which have secret doors, which slows the players down in trying to catch up to him because they've got to try and find a secret door. And if they can't find a secret door, they've got to try and find another way through those areas or wait for him to come back out. I would have him use Children of the Night if he uses it anywhere while he's hiding, and then that's more minions that can come in. I'd have other minions come from literally anywhere. They can come from stairs, corridors, just have them come charging in, attack the players and support Strahd. And a cool animate objects flavour you could do is the broken bits of glass from the stained glass window. These beautiful, colourful shards of glass just firing at the players sounds really epic. The Study, K37, the Seer card. If your card reading indicates an encounter with Strahd in this area, he is sitting back in one of the overstuffed chairs, staring into the fire. And this one is very special to me because this is the card that I drew in my game. So when I ran Curse of Strahd for my players, they fought Strahd initially in the Study. And I had lots of fun with it. I had him rope in Strahd's animated armour, which is on the parapets, the ramparts or whatever they're called. And that was pretty deadly and pretty tough for them to fight. I didn't do this, but you could potentially rope in the Invisible Stalker in one of the nearby rooms. That could be a bit over the top and overkill, because that thing is pretty scary and pretty deadly. I did a really cheeky thing as well, where I had him straight away, as soon as sunlight got switched on, he retreated through the fire. Now my understanding is if you pass through the fire during your turn, you take fire damage, but I had Strahd do it as his legendary action move, which this might be bending the rules a little bit or slightly unfair, but because of the particular wording, he wasn't first time on his turn or starting his turn there, he was moving through on someone else's turn, and so I said he didn't catch on fire. I kind of picture the way he moves when he uses that legendary action as like in Netflix Castlevania when one of the vampires move and it's almost like they're blinking in and out. It's like almost just like really quick, and that's kind of, so he kind of just went past the fire so quickly it didn't even ignite him. This then led the players through the fire, which some of them took damage on, to the place where there's the gas traps, the spiders and so on, and you know that's a dead end because then he can go through north through the Treasury, back where the Heart of Sorrow staircase is, and attack from there, but it's kind of distracting the players, leading them to a dead end where there's monsters and hazards. You could lure them to the Heart of Sorrow stairs, which are deadly. I think I talked about this in one of my videos, where those stairs, my goodness, they knocked a few players and NPCs off to the ground floor, taking huge amounts of fall, bludgeoning damage. I think those stairs were probably more deadly than Strahd was, to be honest with you. I would have him use Children of the Night anywhere while hiding. I'd have minions join from everywhere and anywhere. It's quite a large floor. The study's quite central, and there's multiple routes minions could come from, lots of different stairways, lots of fun you can have with that. And animate objects, I originally was going to have him cast it on books in his study and you just have these books flying around and hitting the players, but I don't think he would disrespect his property, disrespect his book collection. He strikes me as the kind of guy who would not want to do that to his books unless he just had some really cheap books that he doesn't like. But there's rubble in K45, there's utensils in K36 and a few other areas where he can probably fire some things, some tiny objects at the players and cause them some harm. The Treasury, K41, the Tempter card. If your card reading indicates an encounter with Strahd in this area, he is perched atop the tower. When I first started researching this one, I struggled. I thought, well, there's not a huge amount going on in this location. It's quite a weird location. The tower takes up most of the space. But I think the tower is the main focal point. So the tower is an instant fortress, or a Durn's instant fortress. Is that how it's pronounced? Durn? And this tower, his fortress, instant fortress, he can go inside and recover health in there. You could either go mist form through one of the arrow slits, or I think it says it's got a trapdoor at the roof. So he can, I think it says he starts on the roof, so he could just go straight down and inside, and the players have the difficulty then of trying to get inside. Do they try and knock the wall down? Strahd could then be attacking through the arrow slits and then hiding from the sunlight. You know, he appears, there's Ray of Frost, for example, or Fireball, then hides behind the wall so he's not exposed to the sunlight through the arrow slits. Or he could even phase through in and out of the walls potentially, rather than, you know, needing to mist into the arrow slit or go through a hatch. If you want to be really mean, he could retreat through the north wall of the room, not just of the tower, but of the room. That leads him back to the Heart of Sorrow staircase, and there's no way the players can get through there unless, I guess, they have magic or some means like Pass Wall. But I think that's a 5th level spell, and they may have 5th level spells at level 9. I can't remember. But yes, so if you want to be really mean, you could do that. And then they've got to like abandon that room and fight him elsewhere on the floor. You could use Children of the Night anywhere while he's hiding. I'd have minions join. They could maybe wait from the study for if and when the players then have to head back out to try and find him. There's a whole bunch of minions just waiting there. And if he's still with the tower, he can cast animate objects on some of the coins in the tower and just fire them through the arrow slits. That could be really cool, actually. Just having these coins attacking to players. And if they're the coins that have Strahd's face on them, all the better. North Tower Peak, K60, the Marionette card. If your card reading indicates an encounter with Strahd in this area, he is standing next to the iron chest. This is quite an open and exposed area with not many places he can sort of lair action wall phase to. So I guess the best thing is kind of move away from this area, either go through the ceiling and have a dramatic battle on the rooftop, where I think it says 10 swarms of bats can join a few rounds later, plus he could do Children of the Night there. Or potentially he could try and go down the Heart of the Sorrow stairs and lure them further down, and then the Heart of Sorrow stairs, you might, you know, shake them off and that kind of thing. And if they haven't dealt with the heart at that point, that could rope in the vampire spawn and the animated halberds that are there to protect it. If you want to be really dramatic, Strahd could try and knock the players down that hole. That could be really brutal. Or you could lure them down by just jumping down and spider climbing, grabbing onto a wall, or turning into a bat and flying down. I would have him use his Children of the Night anywhere else than maybe that location, because obviously it uses an action, and want to do that while maybe he's hiding and out of the firing line. Minions can join from the Heart of Sorrows stairs, and in this instance, unless he moves elsewhere where there's something that's usable for animate objects, I probably wouldn't use animate objects. Maybe keep that 5th level spell slot for something else like Fireball. The Hall of Bones, K67, Donjon. If your card reading indicates an encounter with Strahd in this area, he is sitting comfortably at one end of the table, holding the skull of a long dead foe. Very cool. Really important point about this room is it's considered desecrated ground. There's information for that in the, can't speak for the new Dungeon Master's Guide, but the 2014 version in the Adventure Environment chapter. Strahd will have advantage on all saving throws, but only while he's in that room. So if you do the wall phasing, that's not going to apply when he moves around. Maybe it's a room he keeps returning to because he knows that he's stronger while inside it. He could potentially rope in Rahadin and the Shadow Demon, Cyrus Bellevue, and the skeletons in K69 to help out as well. They're all in nearby rooms on that floor. He could use Children of the Night while he's in other rooms. He can have minions join from everywhere and anywhere nearby, some of the staircases that lead down from the higher floors of the castle. And you could cast animate objects on loose bones, maybe in the Hall of Bones, that can fire and hit the players. If Argynvost's skull is still there, you could potentially cast animate object on the skull. I don't know what kind of classification size it would be, probably large. And I think if he does cast it, it counts as 4 of 10 or something like that. Again, this is going by the old rules. So you could do Argynvost's skull plus a bunch of tiny bones as well to attack the players. That could be really weird, but in a good way. So the Catacombs as a whole. So please watch this section first if your final battle is in Sergei's tomb, Strahd's tomb, or the King and Queen's tomb. He could rope in the tens of thousands of bats that equate to lots of swarms of bats. This, I think, is crucial minions-wise. He can just constantly harass and hound the players with lots and lots and lots and lots of bats. Roping crypt monsters such as Sasha, that's the vampire spawn in Crypt 20, the giant wolf spiders in Crypt 27, the Wraith and Hellhounds in Crypt 38, and if Bucephalus is still around in Crypt 39, bring out old Busey as well, and do a few hoof attacks or whatever. Sergei's tomb, K85, the Broken One and Instant cards are responsible for leading the players here. If your card reading indicates an encounter with Strahd in this area, he is lying across Sergei's coffin, weeping. Strahd could lower the bars to separate people. Say if half the PCs are in the room, half of them aren't, he's just separated them. That could be bad, especially if the sunlight users are further away. You can use Children of the Night probably elsewhere. You probably suggest using Legendary Action Movement and then wall phasing to go and south into the crypts and maybe hide and attack from within the crypts. He goes in a crypt, moves, attacks, goes in another crypt, and so on. Minions can join from anywhere and use those bats. Animate objects. I love this spell. And for most of the rooms, locations, I say, oh, there's something that makes sense. Here there isn't, other than, I'm sorry to say this, Putrid Waste from the Catacombs floor. Ugh. Strahd's Tomb, K86, the Dark Lord and the Horseman card, lead here. If your card reading indicates an encounter with Strahd in this area, he is in his coffin, ready to attack anyone who opens the lid. There's the teleportation alcove just south of him to retreat and escape to Crypt 32, and then he can go into the other alcove in Crypt 32 and go back. And he can just go back and forth. Obviously, by doing that, the players will then know of its existence as well, so it could backfire. He could lure them to the white teleporters. That's the info in Crypt 14, where if they step on the teleporters just outside the room, they get swap places with the white. This could be cool to do, especially if they teleported in through the teleporter in K78, because chances are they won't know about these teleport traps. If they came in through just wandering through the catacombs, they probably did know to avoid them or bypass them somehow. I believe this is the only place where minions might already be there. The three brides are there if you are running it rules as written. I know there's a lot of people who give the brides more agency and more involvement in the story. I had Anastasia do an attack on the players at one point, and so she was already taken out. So if you are just using the bride's rules as written, or they haven't really done anything yet, or they're still in play, they could be here. And I really recommend mixing up the stat blocks. So there's a great DM's Guild resources called The Real Housewives of Ravenloft for alternative stat blocks for the 4 consorts. I didn't actually run Real Housewives of Ravenloft as is, but it's quite cool that, say, for instance, Valenta has some sort of rogue and assassin abilities, Ludmilla has some spells, and so on. It gives them a bit more flavour and variety. It makes them a little bit tougher too, I think. Strahd could lower the bars. This could be a good way to separate people, especially if the Sunlight users are just outside the room. You could use Children of the Night anywhere, maybe from inside one of the crypts, where he moves using legendary actions, and Warphase is using his lair action to get out of that area and head north, or maybe if he uses the alcove teleporters. I'd have minions join from everywhere, don't forget those bats. And animate objects. I think I said this for Sergei's tomb as well, I'll say it again. I like to use animate objects, I think it's a great spell. Use it on 10 tiny objects, and most of the other locations have something. But the only thing that's really an object, so to speak, is the putrid waste, the bat guano all over the floor of the catacombs. Flavour-wise, that's a poor choice of words. You might not want to then have a spell that animates poop and throw it at your players. Hey, you might want to do that. It's quite funny, but it might ruin the sort of horror vibe, but that is a possible option. And finally, the King and Queen's Tomb, K88, the Ghost and Raven cards. If your card reading indicates an encounter with Strahd in this area, he is in a frenzy of rage and despair. Ugh. Make use of the blue curtain. This is going to affect the PC's approach. There's a whole thing about you need to be, I think it's lawful good in order to go through it, or you can sort of sneak around if you're a smaller creature, and they're going to go charging, the barbarian charges in, and then just suddenly teleports back, and they're like, oh, huh? So, you know, Strahd can fire a fireball while they're trying to figure out how to get past this thing. If they're inside the room and Strahd gets to the west of them, he could gust of wind them out through the very brittle glass of the window and they can plummet 900 feet. That could be really cool. I would have him use Children of the Night elsewhere, so maybe from inside one of the crypts, maybe he uses legendary action movement and his lair action to head west and hide in some of the crypts. I'd have minions joining from everywhere, don't forget those bats. And animate objects. I've said this for when I covered Strahd and Sergei's tomb. There aren't really any objects lying around. There is a heck of a lot of bat guano, so he could use magic to fling poo at the players. You might not like the idea of that. Your players probably certainly won't, but it's an option. Something to bear in mind if Strahd is desperate or you really want to use animate objects, which is a great spell, essentially creating 10 mini minions to cause a lot of havoc. On to my general, non-location specific tactics. Let's talk about the sunlight first of all. There's a very important caveat with the sunlight. It says, while in sunlight, Strahd takes 20 radiant damage, and I'm going to say this with emphasis, at the start of his turn. So what this means is he only takes damage from sunlight if he starts his turn in sunlight. He's fine to move through sunlight with his legendary action as movement, to just basically make sure he doesn't start his turn in sunlight. What I did was I tried to ensure that he saves one of his 3 legendary actions for movement literally just before his turn, so that if just before his turn somebody gets there and he's still in sunlight, he can then quickly move and then he starts his turn as normal. The wall phasing, don't forget, I think for the most part when I talk about the individual locations I've talked about going into nearby rooms, he can go through he can go through the floor, he can go through the ceiling. Don't forget about that as well. He can use greater invisibility and mirror image at the same time. Mirror image is not a concentration spell while greater invisibility is, so it's not like he's 2 concentration spells at the same time. He can cast both, making him near impossible to hit because he's invisible, and if they do manage to target him, they'll likely hit one of his mirrors. If the PCs are clustered together, fireball. He could be really cruel and polymorph the Sun Sword or Holy Symbol of Ravenkind user into some sort of animal. I believe the way polymorph, or at least 2014 polymorph, I can't speak for the new version, but 2014 polymorph, items are melded into the form, so the sunlight would disappear. Strahd turns them into a cat. They just turn into a cat with no armor and weapons, that kind of thing. So the sunlight would disappear temporarily until he drops concentration or loses concentration or what have you, or they're knocked out of that form from an ally hitting them. You could be really cruel here, and this is what I did with one of my players who luckily they were a good sport about this, is I had them transformed into a killer whale. So not only could they not move, and couldn't attack. I think they did attack one enemy that was within 5 feet of them. I said they could just about go and bite them. But the players couldn't then knock the character out of, it's not like one hit and it's a 1 HP animal. It's got like tons of HP. So the only way really to bring that character back into play and the sunlight back into play was to try and knock Strahd out of concentration. If you've got a few PCs clustered together with low HP, that could be a good time to cast Sleep to take them out of the fight temporarily or potentially for good. And to reiterate animate objects, which I talked about earlier, best practice for animate objects is if it's 10 tiny objects, because not only does it mean there's lots of objects, they have a higher AC and a higher to hit bonus, which makes them harder to hit. And I would save legendary resistances, of which he has 3, I would save them. The absolute priority is Hold Vampires of the Holy Symbol of Ravenkind. If he fails that, he needs to ideally, unless it's later on in the battle and he's getting tired and the battle's gotten on very long, you definitely don't want him getting hit by that very early on. I would save it for potentially maintaining concentration if he's using a really important spell such as Polymorph to take a Sunlight PC out of a fight, as I just mentioned, or on Greater Invisibility to remain invisible, say if he's only just cast it and he's still got like up to 10 more rounds to use it. I did see somebody argue that don't waste the legendary resistance on maintaining concentration, that in those cases I would recommend it, because otherwise he's lost that spell and that could change the tides of the battle against him. And I'd save it for any big attack, especially if it's radiant damage. If it's, say, someone does a small attack and he fails a saving throw, he's got decent saving throw stats to be fair, and it only does 5 HP damage, he'll probably absorb, take the hit and not waste a legendary resistance on it. He'll only do it if it's a big attack where, taking in half the damage or however it works would make a big difference to his HP. If he's desperate for health, he could wall phase away and recover health in other rooms away from sunlight. If he's really desperate for health, he can grapple using the unarmed strike and bite to recover HP while also damaging a PC or an NPC. I also want to talk about what happens if you draw the Mists card during the Tarokka reading, and the players don't go back 3 days later like it says. If they draw the Mists card, I'm looking at the book down here, then there's no clue as to where the final showdown with Strahd will occur. It can happen anywhere you want in Castle Ravenloft, but Madam Eva, if they go back at least 3 days later, can potentially redraw it. If they don't do the 3 days thing, it's your choice. I would probably suggest one of the crypt options because it's iconic. There's a lot of places he can hide. There's a lot of minions he can rope in with all the millions of swarms of bats. Not literally millions, but you know what I mean. And I'd probably say if this happens in your game, don't give it too much thought. Don't plan too far in advance because you never know, they might surprise you one day, your players, and go, oh, we should go back to Madam Eva and get it redrawn. So you don't want to put too much thought or planning preparation into the location of your choice and then they go back to Madam Eva. You could use one of 2 bonus options. So one of these was actually the final location when I was a player of Curse of Strahd. To this day, I don't know if the DM drew it as a mistake and ran with it, or if he just thought this is a cool location, I want to include it. But when he read the Strahd's location in the castle, he didn't read one of the location clues. He read the information for Piddlewick 2. What horror is this? I see a man made by a man, ageless and alone, it haunts the towers of the castle, which is K59, the High Tower Peak. Now, this was quite an interesting place for the final battle actually, because there's that big hole in the ground, the shaft of the tower, and you could have like that moment in thinking of the movie 300 where someone just gets kicked down the hole. Similar to like being knocked down the Heart of Sorrow tower, I guess, similar sort of thing. And when my DM played it, Strahd was going like up and down while invisible and while spider climbing the surface, the walls of the shaft, and then firing fireballs up into the top of the tower at the rest of us, which was pretty cool. So that could be a potential location. I've seen some DMs say that south of the Heart of Sorrow, so this is the tower roof, K57, is a really cool spot for a final battle with Strahd. It's dramatic. You can have the rain and the lightning and everything quite high up. There's the Heart of Sorrow nearby, which, rope in the vampire spawn, the animated halberds if they're still in play. He's outside, so we could potentially do Children of the Night and summon 3d6 wolves. It's a bit weird that wolves would just appear, but technically they could, I guess. They could just run up some nearby stairs or whatever. So that could be another consideration as well, right by the Heart of Sorrow tower. And that's it for this one. I'll be honest, I'm not 100% savvy with all of 5e's rules, with all the locations. I might have missed something, I might have gotten something wrong. Obviously, apologies if that's the case. And if it is, please leave a comment. Let me know if I've gotten something wrong or forgotten something or missed something, or let me know if there's other tactics you can think of that I didn't cover. other cool places within the castle where a battle could happen or where a battle could be led to after they've seen Strahd in the place as per the Tarokka reading or anything. Please subscribe. I've got a whole bunch of more videos coming out soon. I'm trying to do a big push for videos. Our likeliest next Curse of Strahd video is going to be me talking about all the fated allies, or the correct terminology is Strahd's enemies. I'm going to talk about all of them in a row, how I role played them or would role play them, just combat tips, anything else, information for where it appears in the book, that kind of thing. And I also do Ravenloft videos as well. So if you're thinking of doing Ravenloft one-shots or campaigns, for example, I'm doing a post-Curse of Strahd sequel campaign now set in the Domains of Dread, more Domains of Dread beyond Barovia, then you might want to check those out. I've covered a whole bunch of domains where I've talked about how I run them. A popular one is Folkovnia, where there's the zombie sieges every 30 days. A new army of zombies comes to the land and attacks. Some really good stuff in Van Richten's Guide, and my videos, in addition to covering Domains of Dread, also cover various NPCs, some of whom you might want to actually throw into Curse of Strahd, like Jan the Sunstar, who once appeared in Barovia. Or if you want more proteges of Van Richten, similar to Esmeralda, there's the Weathermay Foxgrove twins as well. And we'll end this one there. Thank you, Mist Wanderers.